Welcome to the Heavy Spoiler Show. I'm your host, Translucent Paul, and this video, we're breaking down the boys. The season finale is now here, and throughout this video, we're going to be recapping the episode, talking about the Easter eggs, and also how the ending differs from the comics. There's a shitload to get through, so I just want to dive right into it after I tell you about our brand new ice shirt that's now on the merch store below. That's along with our Deep Inspired one, Soldier Boy one, Homelander one, and more, and there's big discounts as well, and if people could see me, that's what I'd wear. Anyway, last week saw the death of Frenchy at the hands of Homelander. Sakuna OFNN2 on Twitter actually posted info on the scene that was cut on how the character died. Turns out that Homelander got punched him and then exposed the wound to the radiation, which I just thought I'd add in because we're clarifying things from last time. We were left with Kimiko in an agonizing place, and she even reverts back to being a mute. Beyond that, Deep's career and free pass to go into the sea's been ruined, and Homelander has got his dad back in the chamber. I will talk about Uprising and how he's going to play into that later along with the other spin-offs, but for now, let's just focus on the episode.
Shock and awe, my son. Blood and fucking bone.
And that final phrase, blood and bone, is the name of the episode, and it actually builds off a big scene from earlier in the series where Homelander and Butcher talked about their final showdown.
Scorched earth. Shock and awe. Blood and bone.
Where we begin though is in the wake of Frenchy's death and the boys burying their fallen friend. This is under a makeshift grave, which kinda reminded me of the ending of Logan. It's often a staple of westerns where the hero who sacrificed themselves is given a send-off before things ramp up towards the end. In Hughie's pocket, he also finds a letter from the character, which calls him Petit Hughie. This was a nickname he had for the character, and it turns out this is his last will and testament. He smuggled it into the Freedom Camp, and we learned in episode 1 that he was someone who could get people anything. Also got a lot of flashes of the camp in V For Vendetta, where Evie read a note passed through the prisons from a woman named Valerie to V, and then lastly to Evie. It's a crass way to send things off though, with Frenchy admitting he's seen everyone's arseholes. Lad seemed a bit obsessed, but he says how they've been through the best and worst of times, and basically has seen every single aspect of them. I also thought it was subtle how they had Sage standing at the back, possibly even showing her guilt over leading to where things currently stand. But Frenchy saved her life, and though he didn't see her arsehole, the boys were his family. Now it's during this scene that we get the sense Kimiko's regressing to a state of anger. As we learn, the experiments worked, and he's able to harness the same power as Soldier Boy. It's also somewhat ironic that Kimiko's gained these nuclear powers as her great-grandfather was killed during Hiroshima. She's also somewhat lost herself in losing Frenchy. She's reverted to being a mute again, and is just a ball of anger, unable to fully express herself. I think Karen Fukuhara has done an incredible job this season, and she's really got to flex her acting chops throughout. Kimiko, started off as a pretty one-dimensional character, and in the comics, she was pretty flat too, but this season especially has given her so much to play with. However, I do like the fact that we went back to the old version for the finale. We then cut to the Democratic Church of America ad, which builds off the one we saw earlier in the season. This is black and white, and constantly going on about how Homelander's a radical. Now this is a parody of Apple's Think Different advert, which had figures like Einstein, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Muhammad Ali, and so on. This was to celebrate the rebels who thought differently, and the tagline was something like, "Here's to the crazy ones, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do," which we get a reference to at the end.
Because the ones strong enough to change the world are the ones who usually do.
Unlike the advert though, this is all just about Homelander, and it sums up how he's pushed every other great mind and creative to the side to prop himself up. The tagline, "Homelander reboots the universe," also kind of builds off what they've been talking about throughout the episodes. We heard last week how the VCU is being rebooted, but this phrase reminds me of Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. Comics are, non-stop reboots with countless new issue number ones, big events like Crisis and Secret Wars and stuff, and yeah, they're just constantly doing things to try and keep interest in their properties. But when you have someone at the center who wants to stay relevant forever, wants all attention on him, he's just using this as a way to basically make himself the number one. We then pull out to see this on a TV next to a can of Turbo Rush before realizing that we're with Ryan, who's hidden at a cabin. Homelander then arrives, and it evokes the feelings of the cabin in season 2. Though it's not the same location, I think this place has been picked because that's somewhere where Ryan first turned against his dad. It was also close to where his mother died, and thematically it's just a great place to have the pair meet again. It turns out that crime analytics tracked him down, and we know from earlier in the series that even when he went to Russia, Homie was keeping tabs on him. Homelander then says,
But you're also the son of God, and you should not be sleeping in a barn.
now this is, obviously meant to be ironic, as Jesus was of course born in a manger. Homelander doesn't care about humility though, or serving others. In his mind, God should be served by the ones below them. This is ultimately what his speech devolves into at the end, because even when given a teleprompter, he can't help but revealing his true nature. Now, I think Homelander here is trying to repair their relationship because, really, Ryan's the only one he has left. His dad tried to go for a pack of smokes last week, and he ended up holding him in the chamber. Ryan is the last of his family who remains, and in his own way, Homelander wants to try and make a family. It's something the character's never had, and every part of his life is being controlled by a corporation. Madeline was the closest thing he had to a mother, but that was all a way to push a corporate agenda. She even weaponized the imagery of motherhood like breast milk and subverted to be a sexual thing that was used to manipulate the soup. Soldier Boy wasn't really a father either, and Homelander was simply created through his DNA. Ryan is the closest thing he actually has to something that wasn't made by a corporation, but because of this, Ryan doesn't want anything to do with him. He at least has some semblance of what it means to be normal, and Becca provided that for him in their very short time together. But this essentially comes down to nature versus nurture. They have the same powers and potential, but Homelander's upbringing destroyed him. We saw in Season 4 how the scientists bullied him as a child, which led to him being absolutely fucked in the head. Ryan was raised by Becca, Valerie, and Billy, who all loved and cared for him. So they have the same blood, same powers, but in the end, they couldn't be any more different. Ryan completely destroys him and tells him how pathetic he is, and it kind of reminds me of my sons when I take away their Batmobiles. I need them for the background of a video.
You were already the most powerful person on Earth, and you were a lonely, miserable piece of fucking shit. Throwing tantrums when you didn't get what you want. Why the fuck would more power make you any better? It's just gonna make you an even more lonely, miserable piece of shit. Scaring people into calling you God doesn't make you God. And deep down you know that.
I think it's one of the strongest character moments we've had in the series though, and it makes an excellent scene for Cameron Corvetti. It's kind of crazy that we watched him grow up throughout the series, and this is such a hard-hitting way to tell his dad what he really thinks of him. Homelander clearly doesn't want to lose anyone else though, as this is the last person he has in his life. Cutting to the hideaway, we then see that Milk's wearing a Grandmaster flash tee. You shouldn't push him because he's close to the edge, but he's fixing up the focus group survivor from last week, and we have London Thor back as Jordan Lee. After last week's scene, they actually revealed that Thor had been pregnant while shooting, but they used lots of camera techniques to hide the bump, like sit behind a bench, that sort of thing. Also, can we just appreciate as well, how fucking cool the name London Thor is? Your parents could have called you like Paula or some shit, but you got that name instead. What a fucking banger. We also have Emma and Marie, with them being told to take the survivors to Canada. Eric Kripke actually revealed earlier in the week as well in an interview that the plan for Gen V Season 3 was them up north in a world post fort. Now, I did try and get a clip from this interview, but it turns out it's been taken down. Why this is, though, is because in it he said things were taking place after the death of Homelander, and yeah, saying that just before the season finale, mate, I can imagine people were going mental behind the scenes, probably looking like Ashley. So yeah, I'm guessing that Amazon asked for the video to be privated until the finale's out, but yeah, don't know how well it worked because lots of people saw it. It is kind of a shame though that this might be the last we see of the characters, but they could end up possibly being brought across to the boys Mexico, which we will talk about more towards the end of the video. Canada being used for Americans to escape to is also the inverse of people heading to the US from Mexico. It's been used in franchises like The Handmaid's Tale as a way to escape from a totalitarian regime. It's also poetic that people who supported Homelander and would have hated Canada are now running to the country, which is something that Emma mentions. Marie then asks Annie if this is a one-way trip for her, and this kind of circles back to a conversation in Season 1. There, Maeve berated her for thinking she was a do-gooder and how this world beats you down. Starlight's been ground down by the world, and she's accepted her fate just like Milk. However, she now sees there's a different way to look at things, and that she can keep the light burning bright for as long as she can. That's what gives other people hope, and ultimately, that's what really matters. Marie says she doesn't regret meeting her heroes though, and we watch as the group drive off to get out of the country and onto cancellation probably. But it's here that we then jump to the White House. So far then, Ashley's anniversary, and she's got a reinforced ball gag. Turns out the other ones have been exploding and flying off, which is an issue that we saw earlier in the season. Soup problems mate that. His scream obviously blasts sound waves like Black Bolt and maybe him and Medusa have similar problems. Actually, never suspected this to come around the way that it does either, especially like back in those early episodes, but ultimately this is used as a way to defeat him. We then see him working away on a laptop and can see he's having a crisis as he can't believe how many people are doubting Homelander. He doubted God because God never responded to his prayers, and now he's put his faith in a false idol purely because he's flesh and blood. But this has basically turned him and his goons into the thought police who will kill anyone who doesn't immediately drink the Kool-Aid. Speaking of drinks, Ashley then asks him to break out the expensive wine and begs for Ashley too to confirm her own beliefs. She also says that they took wine from a pedo priest, and due to this happening so close to like the events of what's happened in these episodes, I'm guessing it was someone who is framed like Firecracker's old priest. Oh Father has likely been looting these people's homes, and it's akin to how the Nazis would steal jewelry and such during the Holocaust. But yeah, Ashley wants to know if Oh Father will flip on Homie and has to take a leap of faith to ask him the question. She doesn't go that route though, but I love how the scene kind of plays into theirs, or rather lack of their power. Oh Father's power comes from his voice, but he refuses to speak out against Homelander. Ashley's power comes from her ability to read minds, but Ashley too won't do this as she's powerless as well. It's just a great idea to have someone whose power lies in their voice and one who lies in their thoughts to be completely powerless in conversations like this. Going back to Frenchy's grave, we see Sage give another personal speech about her past. We can see she's got a Detroit t-shirt on as well, tying into her home. This is something that she's often worn when in her civilian clothes, and she also had a Detroit t-shirt on last week. She tells the story of her dog who got hit by a bus and talks about how she had to carry her home. The grief stayed with her, and Kimiko is refusing to let go of the memory, which Sage uses to rile her up. She calls Frenchy her pet, and this anger engages the blast and power within her. Similar how Frenchy did this to Soldier Boy at Fort Harmony, and we see firsthand with Sage how it's worked. Her powers are now gone, and she's finally shut off from her overthinking. It's kind of like sort of a lobotomy for good, and means she doesn't have to destroy the world to go and enjoy some reading. Hell, she might not even read anymore. Come watch the heavy spoilers show, love. I'll read for you. She then attempts to recite, "Farewell, the tranquil mind, farewell content." This is part of a soliloquy from Othello. It's basically an opposite to Sage here, who's finally free and calm and now no longer cursed with intelligence. Cursed with knowledge, I think Thanos says. Cutting to a motel, we then see her binging on junk food, finally getting to live out her best life. She's got a whole load of Taco Bell, which is something she's mentioned a lot this season. And she's the most relatable character in the show as well. Stupid as shit, craving chalupas all the time, and basically me. We do see though that they're scanning Kimiko, who's setting off the Geiger counter and probably giving everyone cancer. This actually sort of reflects the scene where Soldier Boy was kept in a motel during season 3, and this was so Hughie and Billy could keep an eye on his radiation levels. They also have a handy countdown for when Homelander reboots the universe, and know that he's gonna announce he's the second coming on Easter. It's also a bit of a meta jab at Marvel, as Homelander's name's on a chair. It's the same way they did the Doomsday countdown, and I remember spending 5 hours covering that and being completely bored out my fucking mind. Wish it was this one though, because now Homelander's the only hero here, and thus he's the only one who needs a chair. During this, the psychics that we saw on that wall will be used to scan the audience, and anyone who shows a sign of dissent will be purged from this new world. Now, in many ways, the speech does somewhat reboot the universe, as Homelander's destroyed, and we're then like getting loads of spin-offs and stuff. The plan though is to break into the White House using the underground tunnels, and thankfully not use Sage's idea of dressing up as the Grenadier Gods. Used by JFK to shag Marilyn Monroe, these underground tunnels provide access to the White House. These tunnels have actually appeared in the series before, and it's where Robert Singer fled to during season 4. We then get a scene that was used in the season 5 trailer. Now if you go back to that, around the 40-second mark, you'll watch this scene play out, and they actually insert a cut to Frenchy to make it seem like he was still alive. Everyone, including me, in the breakdowns was like, why is Kimiko back to doing sign language? But knowing what we know now, it makes a lot of sense. And sometimes trailers lie, mate. Sage then decides to head to Harry Potter World in Orlando, and we see that for her, ignorance is bliss. Jumping back to the White House, we then see an Elon Musk parody wearing a black suit, black hat and black t-shirt. Known as Gunther Van Ellis, he wants to know if he can get some slave labour and also wants to discuss white birth rates. This also seems like one of those scenes where I'm like, How did he know? Because this was written before the election, and Elon was of course brought into work on Doge and was often seen wearing a similar outfit. They also say he's an amateur astronaut who represents a consortium of billionaires who all have requests. This is something that we kind of saw in real life, and at Trump's inauguration we had lots of the top players in tech in attendance. Again though, mate, written before the election. I'm guessing they probably would have been there if Kamala got elected as well. And yeah, it's just nice to see they're all trying to get themselves in there. But Homelander isn't really interested. Father feels like they need their support though, but Homelander's conversation with Ryan is still clearly sitting with him, and he definitely wonders if people just fear him. I think it's all coming crumbling down, and he basically realizes that without his power he's nothing. This makes his ultimate fate even more ironic, as he loses the one thing that made him feel any sense of worth. Now, Father wants to postpone things, but Homelander's hubris and his need for quick gratification ultimately makes him push forward. We then get what I think might be the funniest entrance the Deep has ever had.
Your Eminence.
Don't know why that cracked me up so much, but I'm gonna miss you, mate. He's come back to sell his next rebrand since being kicked from the Seven. Deep wants to be a crusader, which he says is in the Bible, but obviously the Crusades weren't in the Bible. So Father wonders if he learned that from Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, but the Deep corrects him and says that it's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. This is funny, as both he and Robin Hood wear green, and The Last Crusade actually plays in the plot of the season a bit, as there we have the Nazi Walter Donovan, who's on a quest for the Holy Grail. Whoever drinks from this will be immortal, but he drank from a poisoned chalice that ultimately led to his death. This is because he went after the most glorious looking cup because he believed that's what God represented, much like Homelander. I love how as this is going on as well, we see Homelander casually flying Van Ellis up and then coming back without even breaking a sweat. He did want to be an astronaut. He then unleashes on the Deep and completely destroys him. Fucking brutal, mate, especially for how much the Deep's done for Homelander. He's turned on his fish friends, betrayed his allies, and killed all for a man who didn't give a shit about him. Now, though the Deep dies later in the episode, I think this is the moment that just completely destroys him. It's sad, but ultimately, it's something we've been predicting for a while now, because it's clear the respect was only one way. In the end though, both A-Train and Black Noir were right about Homelander, but the Deep's been so desperate to be his right-hand man that he never really believed them. It also shows that Homelander doesn't even really know what he wants, and that those who worship him are people that he sees as being beneath him. He's desperate for people to look at him like a god, but absolutely hates those that do. Whether it's Firecracker or the Deep, the fact they put him on a pedestal means he sees them as below him. However, in stuff like the scene with the Legend, we saw he just treated him like another Hollywood star with an ego, and they even framed the scene so the Legend was standing above him. I do wonder what's going through Father's head as well when he looks at the Deep. Surely, like deep down, pun not intended, he must know that this is a fate that could await him, but ultimately he's too cowardly to stop it. Homelander also calls him Kevin to belittle him further, whereas Annie later says it to try and connect with him on a human level.
Deep, Kevin.
The Deep is still in denial at the end though, and on the beach he still considers himself Homelander's bro. Bromelander. We then get our final arming up scene with the boys, which is something that's been a staple of the series. Milk also hands Butcher a crowbar, which is a big weapon from the comics that plays a massive part in the showdown. I will talk about that more in just a bit, as I kind of want to talk about the scenes side by side and ultimately what they lead to in the comics. Hughie then goes to Kimiko, and we can see he's wearing a t-shirt for the band Bad Company, Till the Day I Die. He then tells her she's more than just a weapon, which is a path that her original oppressors pushed her down. Butcher wanted to use her as one in the same way as well, as she was a way to even the playing fields. But Frenchy saw her as something more. The group then head into the White House, whereas in the comics, Butcher went straight across the lawn. This led to an infamous shot of the Supes towering above the building, and they actually use this image as one of the posters, but unfortunately doesn't show up in the episode. We then get Homelander in the White House with a portrait of Lincoln looking over him. 7 years ago, Lincoln was pivotal in freeing the slaves, which adds a sense of irony to the scene. Homelander wants to announce he's enslaving the country, and those who even think of going against him will be wiped out because of it. Also, I know I'm butchering American history there, and I've certainly butchered the 7 years thing, mate, but what do you want from me? I'm British. Point to York on a map, mate, I dare you. You've got no idea where Suffolk is, you son of a bitch. And the country's tiny. Ashley then pleads with Ashley. You know I'm right as well. Ashley then, to be fair, I don't know where Suffolk is either. But yeah, Ashley pleads with Ashley too to help again. And I feel like she's someone who always needs someone to guide her. Though in college she was a rebel that wore a Che Guevara t-shirt, this was still under the guise of a t-shirt sold by a corporation to cash in on their feelings. She then joined Vought and was overseen by Edgar, and even in season 5 she's had her guiding voice and Homelander as her boss. Like, it's pretty crazy as well. Like, even though she's the president, Homelander's the one sat in the chair reading off the speeches. We then see as he announces himself as a god, while psychics at the church scan those in the audience. There's a gold statue of Homelander as well, and what did Kripke know? He then says he's the first coming and their lord and savior, and everyone just kind of looks shocked. He says he's ushering in a golden dawn, and this might be a nod to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This 19th century secret society studied the occult, and Homelander's step into godhood could be a nod to this, but it might be a reach. There's also a guy filming it, which, mate, why are you filming a screen of something being live streamed? He also mentions the website homelander.church, which redirects to the Democratic Church of America website. The boys then unwittingly enter a kill box, which blasts them with sonics. This is a weapon that's neutralized the supes before, and it also feels like a bit like the deleted scene in Superman. There, Lex Luthor had Superman walk the gauntlet, where he blasted him with all sorts of weaponry. This included machine guns, and yeah, as I'm sure you can guess, didn't really work, mate, you bloody plunker. Ashley then makes a dash from her Secret Service escort and makes her way down to the bunker. Finally, Ashley too speaks up to guide her because, for once, she's doing the right thing. It's a great representation of a guilty conscience, and though she gets, arrested at the end, she still was a goodie in a way. She redeemed herself. She then frees the boys and gets one of the best lines in the series.
Homelander's in the Oval Office.
Good. Lead the way.
Fuck no, he would rip my tits out through my vag.
Ashley then makes a dash for it, while Ashley too says she's proud of her. Finding the Deep crying, she then takes him head on, which brings things full circle from the very first episode. He believes that it may just all be a test, and we see as the pair take to the skies. He then references the end of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, where King Richard appears after Robin Hood saves the day. And again, the only similarity is they both wear green. Father then comes in, demanding Butcher and Kimiko, and we get Hughie doing the best Butcher impression I think I've ever heard.
Oi! This shot is diabolical.
Man, I really hope that was Jack Quaid and not a dub, because yeah, that is an Emmy-worthy delivery, that. We then see Annie and the Deep crash on the beach, which is the site that the Deeps made several attacks at. We had his whale being speared in Season 2, the oil spill, and so on and so on. He also had his final talk with A-Train at a beach in France, and it's ultimately a place that he should feel at home at. This should be somewhere he exudes power, but we see now that this is him at his lowest point. Because of his choices, it's led to him being isolated and alone, but he doesn't take responsibility for his actions. Instead, he blames Annie. It's funny, as he's the only person outside of Homelander who's had absolutely no growth, and even Firecracker herself was conflicted about supporting Homelander as a god. He's then thrown to the sharks, literally, and this sends the character off to a watery grave. He's eventually killed by an octopus, with this being a nod to his lover Ambrosia. The fish even shout, "Say her name!" Ambrosia was a lover he betrayed to stay loyal to Homelander, and ultimately he's killed by an octopus to bring things full circle from his choice there. Now mate, might be getting that totally wrong, because it's just how I read it, but they did include a shot of Ambrosia's death in the recap, so I assumed it was that. If not though, comment below. It's a big change from the comics though, as there the Deep survived until the end. He ended up in a group known as the True, who are a rebranded soup team that we met in issue 72. Looked a bit like the Ku Klux Klan, mate, and this had a sense of irony to it, as in the comics the Deep was black. Back at the White House, we then see his father gets gagged, and this causes his head to explode. It's a bit similar to Black Bolt's death in Multiverse of Madness after Wanda fused the character's mouth shut. Also, I did wonder if this might have happened during sex, because yeah, if it didn't have any give, this is probably how stuff would have gone down. It's also yet another person who's blown up in front of Hughie as well, which is something that kickstarted this whole story. We then see Homelander welcoming the believers into a land of milk and honey, which is something that's used to refer to as the promised land in the Bible. However, he gets triggered a bit when reading the sentence, "I am your father." Now obviously it's not because he doesn't like Star Wars, it's because those words with Ryan really sat with him, and he realizes that he's only that in name. His son hates him, and he'll never be the true thing he's desired since he first learned of his child. So he goes off script and tells people to subscribe, and that if they don't, they'll all die horrible deaths. Butcher then bursts in like the Kool-Aid man, and we get a call back to this moment.
Daddy's home. Daddy's home.
Now where things differ from the comics is that Homelander throws an uprising against Vought and his masters. This leads to him going to the White House and killing the president in a scene similar to last week. There the president was Vic the Veep, who was a Vought plant that would allow Vought to proceed unimpeded. But now Homelander was in the hot seat and ready to rule over all. Anyway, Billy realised that this was his chance to take out the baddie, and he arrived there to try and stop him once and for all. And the reason that Homelander felt of doing something as brazen as killing the president in the comics was because he'd been driven mad over the course of the books. Over the story, he'd received images of himself doing heinous things like eating babies, killing pregnant women, and not hitting the thumbs up. He'd never been caught, and thus this emboldened him. He also couldn't remember these acts as well, and just felt like he was going insane. But over time, he embraced this and thought, fuck it. So this is why he started the uprising, because he refused to see himself as the bad guy or someone who was held back by the rules. However, as we learn, things weren't as they seemed. Black Noir arrived acting a little weird, sniffling along, and then he unmasked to finally show everyone his face. Turned out he was actually a Homelander clone who'd been created in case the face of Vought ever went rogue. To the public though, Homelander had been a very good guy who'd lived by the rules because he was under the assumption that you shouldn't fuck with the money. And when I say pretty good guy, I mean he was still bad, but not like Ryan Airy level bad. But him being so good and Noir's one purpose in life being to take the character down slowly drove Noir insane as well. He even had to hide he could fly and wear a mask at all times so no one including Homelander knew who he was. So Noir started committing horrendous acts dressed in a Homelander costume that he then photographed and sent to the leader of the Seven. He'd been driving Homelander insane in the hopes that he'd be called forth to kill him and then he'd finally have a reason for existing. And kill him he did. Noir was messed up in the fight as well though, and on the White House lawn, Butcher finally killed him. Now it's a twist that people have known for decades and decades, and like even since episode 1 of like season 1, people have been talking about it. So I can totally see why they didn't want to do it, because it's pretty played out. Hell, like even the recent Superman film basically did the exact same storyline with Ultraman, even looking a bit like Noir. And it's something I also called from the trailer there. But Noir died and things were over, so yeah, the good guys won. Or so we thought. I'll talk about that more in just a bit, but then Kimiko enters and we get your classic 2-on-1. While this is going down, Annie faces off against the Deep. Now there is something poetic about him getting hit in the nuts, considering what he coerced her into doing. I'm glad that they included some fights as well, because there was the worry that there wouldn't be any in the finale. Kripke even said things weren't going to end in a massive showdown, and I had people messaging me like, is this true? Is it true, mate? And I was like, I don't know, mate, I didn't work on the show, but I'm glad they went all out with it and smash up the White House like the like button. This is very much a rematch of the fight at Herogasm in Season 3, complete with nuclear powers. Except this time it's Kimiko instead of Soldier Boy, but we do get that father/son fight again when Ryan helps out. It also fills in the clone part of Black Noir, as Ryan is technically a descendant of Homelander. Homelander ultimately tries to flee like he did after Herogasm, but Ryan makes his choice and stands against his dad. As much as he thinks he's a piece of shit, Homelander also stood up to his dad as well. He then tells them everyone dies, and we watch as Ryan and Butcher wail on the villain. Ultimately, they manage to restrain him, but Kimiko has some performance issues until she sees a vision of Frenchy. She's had visions throughout the series and has used this as a way to tap into the happiness that was missing from her life. This scene carries a similar motif as well, and Frenchy tells her that the rage isn't what makes her strong. I think it's nice that the beam comes directly from her heart as well, as she uses the love for him to finally blast the bad guy. Homelander has finally lost not only his immortality, but also his powers. It's his worst nightmare to be normal, and I love how Anthony Starr's voice changes from deep and stoic to whiny during the last few moments. Now this blast of course also affects Butcher and Ryan, but it's a cost worth paying because Homelander's finally beaten. He tries to spam his laser attack, which doesn't work, and then fails to fly. He tries to rush Billy, who's of course used to fighting without the powers, and Butcher then brutally beats the shit out of him, and Homelander cries on the floor, begging for mercy. He tries to bargain with him and says he'll give him Vought, and can even get a shapeshifter to be Becca. And then he says something I'll always remember, which is that he'll basically do a fire festival. Homelander being pathetic and on the floor though really reminds me of the ending of Civil War. There, a tyrannical president is asked for a quote, and we watch as he just begs for his life. He will even eat shit, and we see as this is broadcast to the world. We see Times Square and get the firecracker poster in the top left. There's then the play of the Superman poster with the justice served on the Jumbotron, and we also have a Whataburger in the bottom left. These are monuments built to praise him and Vought, but in the end they show just how pathetic that he is. In his final moments he says he's the Homelander, but Billy says that this is for Becca and then jams the crowbar in his head. This plays off how he killed Black Noir in the comics, and ultimately it feels like the perfect death to give the character in the show. In the comics, Billy then took part of his brain, which he said was basically to make things right for what Noir did to Becca. However, Billy doesn't acknowledge that this is something that Becca wouldn't have wanted, which is what he does in the comics, which I do feel like would have gone well with the Homelander theme playing over Billy. We also never got the Supes helping with his coup, but really, that didn't fit in with Homelander's Season 5 story, mainly because his coup was a walk in the park, showing how easy it was to descend into fascism. Finally though, the character's dead, and there's a really bittersweet feeling to the moment. Billy has done it, but he is still clearly troubled, and we see his milk rushes to Ryan. Butcher just stands there, crowbar in hand, is the man who killed his dad, and yeah, there's not really that overwhelming sense of victory you feel like they should have had, which I do think works well with the story, I must say. I'm not saying it's bad. Billy then notices the camera and his performance sight comes out with him grinning widely as he stamps it out. We then see as the White House are still trying to run coverage, with Ashley saying it was the CIA who did it under her orders. The CIA are who funded the boys in both the comics and show, and I'll talk more about how things happen in Dear Becky, where this had a bit of fallout. But Ashley announces she's not resigning before we then cut to the news report where she's being carted off by the FBI. Congress impeached her due to Homelander's dissolution no longer going down, and we see as the boys celebrate at the hideout. Of course, the impeachment stuff, you know what that's about, but this is just like the comics where she was set up to fall on the sword. There, in her final scene, she was seen ripping her hair out, which is much like what they did in the early seasons with Ashley. It also reminds me a bit of Raina making a speech after the events in DC. But with the boys, we see as Kimiko is back to talking, and they share a cigar, calling back to Edgar and Milk's smoking session in the bunker. Ryan is clearly torn up about killing his dad though, and he's now an orphan. Butcher then says how the pair have both lost their abilities, and he suggests finding somewhere quiet to live with Terra. It's kind of the falsity of following dreams and believing they might come true, which is a theme that's actually ran throughout the season. Homelander had his vision of Stillwell as an angel, and this led him down the wrong path. Kimiko had a dream of living with Frenchy, and like Butcher here, it's not something that will actually materialise. Ryan correctly says that Butcher's a bad person too, and we've had a big bit of mirroring between the pair that shows how different that they are. Both of them killed their abusive fathers, but Butcher revelled in it, whereas Ryan clearly feels guilt. Going with him would just lead to him being corrupted further, and Ryan wants a life away from the influence of angry evil men. Ryan no longer having the V in his system also means that Butcher can commit the genocide without hurting him. Butcher then sees Terra's died, which is a scene that really fucked me up. It's different to the comics though, as Terra was presumed to have been killed by Jack from Jupiter. This is perceived as revenge for Billy exposing his sex tape, and to be fair, I can see why after this you're like, no, we're gonna kill every single Supe. The lad never got to shag Homelander. I think for the show though, losing the dog like this and him still going forward shows how bad that he is, because the Supes had nothing to do with the little dog's death and he's still angry and wants revenge, even though he's pretty much got his revenge at this point. What this does is also make Butcher basically as isolated as Homelander was. Both asked Ryan to go and be with them, and both got rejected. Homelander ended up with no one around him, and now that Terra's gone, Butcher is truly alone as well. So he becomes like a mirror version of Homie in that he wants to destroy all those who he doesn't see as being the right kind of person. Butcher then goes to the drawer and gets out the virus, and we cut to an announcement by Edgar on TV. One detail I love here as well is that the murals changed once again. It originally started off as the 7, and then this was changed when all focus went on Homelander. That face has now been scrubbed away as well. Edgar then announces his return to Vought, which is kinda like how Bob Iger went back to Disney. He did say this earlier in the season though, and proves to Milk that there'll always be a Vought.
Motherfucker.
Edgar is basically the comic Stillwell who, after the dust settled, became an off-the-books consultant for the rebranded Vought, which was now called American Consolidated. He and Billy actually have a conversation in the final issue, but for the show that was used for Milk and Edgar's chat in the bunker. I basically touched upon though how corporations can cause the worst crises or disasters in the world, but will always continue. He doesn't even say what the public needs, just what Vought shareholders do. Ultimately though, now the blame's been pinned on Ashley, they can whitewash what happened and carry on. Hughie then finds Terra dead and realises that Butcher's gone to enact his original plan. This takes him to the 7th Tower, which I actually appreciated over the Empire State's building. This is where the evils emanated from at throughout the show, and to me it just works better as a place to have this showdown happen at. Hughie then finds Butcher stood in the same spot as Homelander tends to look out from with his mural above him. I think this actually symbolises a lot of things, as earlier in the season, we did talk about how this was used upside down to show a reverse in ideologies, but now it's above Butcher, it's shown the right way up. Both are men who wanted to bend the world to their will and are willing to kill countless people because of it. So it's just a fitting image, especially with Homelander now being in heaven. Yay! Now this scene kind of plays off what happens with Butcher in the comic, albeit some differences. Due to him believing that all soups were bad, he decided to destroy them once and for all. Out in Russia, he discovered a radio frequency that, when signaled, blew the head off the soups in the area. He then comes to the conclusion that he needs to unleash this on the world and heads to the top of the Empire States Building. However, he knows the boys will try and stop him, so decides to kill them all himself. Hughie's left alive, but Butcher actually does this for a reason. Deep down, he didn't want to do the plan and kinda hoped that Hughie would stop him. He was his canary, of course, and the pair then fought on top of the Empire States Building, where they were driven over the edge. Butcher was impaled on a part of the fence that cut him, and he died thanking Hughie for stopping his plan. He then moved to Scotland with Annie, and it was decades later that we got an epilogue with Dear Becky. Picking up 12 years after the main story, Hughie finds himself in the midst of lockdowns due to the pandemic, and it's during this that he comes across Butcher's journal, which has been sent to him by an unknown figure. Details a couple of extra missions, and kind of gives reason as to why Butcher wanted to go as far as he did. Basically goes through lots of stuff, his missions against Vicor and stuff, and he signs it off by saying, "Goodbye, love, Billy." We also learn that Hughie and Annie are engaged, but haven't been married. As Hughie reads through the diary, he becomes more and more unhinged to the point Annie even questions if he's thinking of picking up where Butcher left off. She begs him not to, and Hughie decides against it, but he feels like he has to track down who sent the diary. Eventually, this leads him to Raina, who, of course, died in the show. But in the comics, her and Butcher had a thing, even if it was a bit mental, and they hated each other and used to scream about it during sex. Raina reveals, though, that she did still have feelings for Hughie and wanted Hughie to read the diary and freak out publicly, which would get its contents notoriety. Raina wanted to bring the soups back in a big way and thought that if the public knew the CIA had been hunting them, all while trying to commit a genocide, then it might make people a bit more sympathetic towards them. But Hughie just says that Raina's pathetic, and he returns to Scotland after deciding to finally marry Annie. That is in an epilogue titled January, which just so happens to be Annie's maiden name. Well, it's still her maiden name, but not a certain, you know what I mean. Hughie signs off with one last message to Becky saying, "Dear Becky, you are with him all the way." He then puts that in a bottle and throws it into the sea, and that's the comic. And I'm glad we can finally talk about it without spoiling stuff now the finale's here. What do you mean you are still reading it? Anyway, for the show, Hughie arrives and questions whether Butcher really wants to do it. He's clearly torn like the source material, and Billy also has a detonator similar to the comic. He says that the plan is to wait until the soups turn up for work and send the virus out through the sprinkler system. Actually, like this better than the arbitrary blowing up of the soups in New York, and his plan's a bit more robust here, as the virus will then spread worldwide. Obviously, we've just lived through a pandemic as well, and when they created the virus in the first place, I did wonder if that was like kind of touching upon real-world events. But Billy's worry is that the place will just make another Homelander, so they need to destroy them once and for all. Hughie then tries to appeal to him, saying that he does have a heart, albeit a broken one. But what Hughie represents is a kind of glass is half full mentality, and even in the face of the inevitable at the Freedom Camp, he always looked on the bright side of life. This even extends to the soups as well, and it was actually in this conversation I realised how similar he and Billy are. Both had the person they loved killed by a soup, but Hughie forgave A-Train and became a better person because of it. Butcher just couldn't bring himself to do this, and ultimately, this need for revenge is what destroys him. Due to Butcher's actions, he always has nothing to live for, or at least he thinks. Hughie has Annie though, and really Butcher does have the boys, but he refuses to see them as part of his family. Deep down though, he obviously sees shades of Lenny and Hughie, and he gets flashes of him right before he pulls the trigger.
You see, Billy had no conscience. He will ask you to pull him back. But the truth of the matter is you are fucked when you get in his way.
Because anyone who's ever loved you, you end up getting them killed, don't you?
Now this is something that Billy says Hughie reminded him of the comics, and it's what they brought up during season 2, I believe. Might have been season 3. Hughie then apologizes to Billy just like the comics, and I do feel like the showdown is a bit better than the source material. He then pulls out a gun, and Butcher tries to belittle him by calling him Petit Hughie. He then wails on him, but Hughie keeps standing up and coming back to him. It's complete opposite to how Homelander was when he was human, and just shows the difference between the two. At the Freedom Camps, Homelander just couldn't get his head around why people admired Hughie so much, but it's in this moment we see exactly why that's the case. Homelander didn't have powers and basically was a snivelling man on the ground, whereas in Hughie's case, he'll always stand up and fight. A lot of the moves Butcher does here are also the same ones he did on Homelander, including the headbutt, and it shows how he's treating both like an enemy. Ultimately, Butcher has the chance to pull the trigger though, but he hesitates and Hughie then shoots him. I'm so glad that Billy didn't kill his friends like in the comics as well, as I think that would have made him completely irredeemable. Billy also says,
"And none of it made a blind bit of difference. You stayed yourself. No matter what I've done."
which is a line right out of the comics. Butcher also sits down wounded, just like his death scene in the source material, and it's framed in a similar fashion. But there, the death was an accident, whereas here, Hughie has to pull the trigger. Ultimately, he stayed on the right path and did the right thing and stopped Butcher's dark future from coming to fruition. It's a very somber moment and a very fitting final scene for Butcher that I feel just sends off the character perfectly. Overall, I think the finale managed to circle back around at the comics really well, and we got so many moments that built off the final few arcs there, which I actually thought would never happen, especially with how much they deviated initially. We then get Billy's funeral, which never happened in the comics, and Hughie calls him a hero for making the world a better place. He's buried right beside Becca, and it brings things full circle from the opening scene of Frenchy's funeral. Hughie also says he's probably in hell kicking the shit out of the devil, which is a line right out of the comics. Hughie and Annie then say they plan to head out to this topless steakhouse, which we heard about in the last episode. Billy also has the perfect words on his headstone, which are, "I fuck off, you, see you next Tuesdays," which is fantastic. In the end, though, it feels like he's much more of a hero as opposed to the comics, which, though they did kind of rush the villain turn, I do feel like it works a bit better than it does in the source material. In the end, Billy may have done bad things, but at the end of the day, he did save the world. He's right next to his wife as well, which is what he wanted all along, and it kind of builds up that line from Dear Becky where Hughie says he was with her all the way. We then hear Billy Joel's Piano Man, which is probably the singer's most famous song. It's a song about people trying to find a little bit of comfort away from the realities of life, and someone at the centre bringing them joy. Joel is of course also Hughie's favourite artist, and we see him wearing a Billy Joel shirt. We then see that each of our boys has a happy ending, as Milk finally marries Monique, and I love how Ryan's with them as well. He's finally found a family with Mother's Milk, who's rebuilding his, and he's a much more positive influence than Butcher or Homelander. Milk then gets the one thing he's been hoping for the whole time, and he's reunited with his family and wife and has a bright future ahead of him. Kimiko also says goodbye, and this shows she isn't going to let the trauma of losing Frenchy send her back into herself. She's adopted Simone, made it to Marseille, and eats the food that Frenchy told her about. I did wonder as well if we might see Sage there, like some sort of Dark Knight Rises ending, but alas. We then get a shock when Robert Singer calls Hughie. He was of course arrested at the end of season 4 after audio was leaked of him organising Newman's assassination. However, he's now back in the White House. I did kind of think he would be one of the many people killed or sent to freedom camps, but guess not. And it's nice to see him back as the Homelander posters are being covered up. In the comics, after all this went down, the presidency was being contested, and this was between Obama and McCain, just like real life. We learn though that Singer's putting the Bureau of Super Affairs back together, which is the team that Hughie worked on at the start of season 3. In a way, nothing has changed, Super's still out there causing trouble, and this could lead to more deaths like Hughie's ex. He refuses though, as he has his own thing going on now, and it's funny as he declines this in the same place that Robin died at in season 1. This is now Campbell Audio Visual though, with that of course being Hughie's surname. The call itself though could possibly hint to some of the spin-offs, and Kripke has kept the franchise open, ready for The Boys Mexico, and possibly some present day scenes in Uprising. Ultimately though, it all builds off season 1, and whereas there he wanted a raise, we see as he now runs the place. Annie is also pregnant, and we hear the baby will be named Robin after his ex, and maybe also because that's the name of the most famous superhero sidekick in comics. No, it's after the ex though, mate, I admit that. But yeah, instead of stepping outside and his loved one being killed, she flies off to fight against rogue supes. I did wonder as well if America would need some sort of de-Homelanderification, like Germany had the denazification, and it's all stuff they could explore in The Boys Mexico. He then mentions going to the office and marrying her, as Annie's mum's angry she's pregnant out of wedlock. She's of course a devout Christian, and again, the sequel comic ended with them tying the knot. It's a great happy ending for most of the boys though, if not but a tad bittersweet. We then get a montage of some behind the scenes photo while If I Ever Leave This World Alive by Flogging Molly plays in the background. That closes out the season and the show as a whole, with this being a pretty solid send-off. I was actually surprised again at how in line with the comics this was, and though it kind of did things beat by beat, bar the boys being wiped out, I think that this was a really good send-off. As I've said time and time again, finales are difficult, but I think sticking to what was there, doing it pretty much by the numbers in terms of what happens in the book, bar Black Noir and the boys dying, yeah, I think they kind of got there. It also leaves me interested to see where things are going to go next time, and yeah, I think it's about as good of a final episode as I think we could have got. Now, Uprising and The Boys Mexico are going to be the two spin-offs that are the next phase in the storyline. Gen V has been cancelled and Jazz Sinclair has said goodbye to the character on social media. But there is the possibility that Marie could pop up down the line, though so far nothing's been confirmed. What we do know though is that Rising will release in 2027 with us focusing on the characters introduced in this season. Rising will be a murder mystery set in the 50s and it'll explore the origins of Vort's first major super team. Jensen Ackles will return as Soldier Boy with Aya Cash returning as Stormfront. We also have Bombsight, Golden Geisha, Private Angel, Torpedo, along with a couple more. Also wonder if we're going to see more of the Godolkin and maybe even see them establishing God U. Clara is also likely going to be there as well with her husband and have an affair with Soldier Boy and also try and establish an American identity. There's going to be 1950s McCarthyism as we explore superhero culture in its infancy, and the first episode will be titled Red Scare and obviously centered around tensions with Russia in the Cold War. As we know, the Reds also captured Soldier Boy and experimented on him, with Edgar being attached to that too. So there's a lot to explore. I do wonder as well if we're going to get stuff set in the present and maybe Soldier Boy narrating things as he tries to figure out life post Homelander. As for The Boys Mexico, that was announced in 2023, and though things have been quiet, it apparently is still in development. Starring Diego Luna, the show will be a Spanish language series set in Mexico City. Apparently it's a self-contained story that examines the corruption and superheroes to the backdrop of Latin America. Apparently a group of fans form their own team and then start to discover the heroes they look up to on what they seem to be. Like I kind of touched upon there, it does seem to have stalled a bit, but Kripke did say in April that they had delivered the pilot to Amazon, who seemed happy with where things were going. I do think how this season has been received will likely play into that too, but viewing figures have been strong despite the fans seeming divided. At least from what I've seen online in my comments section, which is where everyone should go to look for things if they're at Amazon. Heard you're looking for the new James Bond? Someone in my comments said it should be me. It should be me. Those are my thoughts on the season. I think it's been a bit of a weird one, mate. Especially when you factor in like Gen V and all the spin-offs that they're setting up here. I think we had such a strong entry right out the gate, and I think the premiere episode is one of the best in the series. They really hit the ground running with the airplane reveal, the prison escape, and then the death of A-Train. But then I think it fell into something that I feel kind of clouded the season overall, and that is a lack of consequences for things that we were told really mattered. For example, the plane footage since season 1 has been this massive thing that was going to potentially bring everything crashing down, but it was kind of just brushed to the side. We also had this stuff last season with Billy, his cancer, and Kessler that, though referenced, weren't really as impactful as I initially thought they would be. I think the biggest sin as well is also the virus. We had that set up over several seasons of this show, and basically Gen V was created because they needed a way to introduce the virus. We were told over and over that this was the big thing, that was the most pivotal thing in the universe, but did it really mean much? Sort of. In the end, we had them basically going back to a season 3 plotline with the Soldier Boy blast thing, and though I don't think it's terrible, it kind of just made some of the key plot elements seem a bit redundant looking back. Sage's plan was also all over the place, and I don't really think she's as smart as the show tells us she is. Noir also got dropped out of nowhere, and I think there was the potential to bring in elements like Maeve and parody things a lot more, but obviously, rightly or wrongly, the show focused on the Trump angle above everything else. So yeah, maybe in years' time, this will be looked back upon as like the show that kind of summed up the media's feelings about Trump at the time the most. The earlier seasons dealt with a lot of other things as well, but Trump is just a headline a day, and I think they thought that that would be the best thing to make Homelander become. And maybe it was at the cost of exploring things with other super teams from the comics and stuff, as they were so focused on that. Also think the humour did get a bit crass at points. Like when Annie's staring at clouds and doing dick jokes, I don't know, it just seems like Like, dick jokes are the only jokes they have. But I do have to say that's kind of a nitpick, and on the whole, I think they hit their stride when it came to the gore. Jokes about the characters themselves, like what they did with the Deep, and some of the cameos were hilarious as well. I think Anthony Starr crushed it as usual, and Homelander's just been one of those unforgettable villains who's been one of the best on TV. The guy can handle any emotion and flip between them with ease. He can be the butt of the joke one scene and then absolutely terrifying the next. He can be a cool and calm, sedated presence who's biting his tongue, and then one who's just going absolutely apeshit. And the guy nails everything they write for him. Beyond that, the core cast are really strong as well, and they've played all their parts brilliantly throughout the show, with this feeling like a fitting end to them. New characters in general can often have difficulty coming into and standing out, but Daveed Diggs really shone here as well. Jensen Ackles was also solid gold as Soldier Boy as well, even if I think the writing and character motivations at points were a bit all over the place. I think in terms of where we leave things though, that I'm pretty satisfied with at least that side of it, and I wasn't in like complete utter shell shock like I had with Game of Thrones or Stranger Things. And like Stranger Things, I remember I went to bed at like 7 p.m. on New Year's Eve because it was releasing in the morning on New Year's Day, and I was so tired, and I remember just watching it being like, did I give up my New Year's for that? And I did. So yeah, not that bad. But I think this season we've had some real high points, and by far the best performances we've had. Though we've also had a lot of plot threads drop, it's meant because of that, in some way they've managed to keep lots of twists and turns coming and kept the season pretty unpredictable. Like, I have to say, when they're introducing things, I'm like, oh, well, the season's obviously going to go this way, but then they drop them, and I'm like, oh, well, it's going that way. So yeah, maybe that was why they did it. I didn't even expect them to take the plot half the places that they did, and I think this was a good but not great way to send off the show. I do kind of wish we got a bit more focus on the world events and how they were dealing with things as well, because yeah, some of the stuff just seems to be told instead of being shown. You know, earlier seasons had characters going to like the Middle Eastern stuff and taking part in combat stuff, whereas here everything just seemed kind of central to Vought Tower. But as they said in episode 1, finales are hard. Pleasing everyone is nigh on impossible, and now I think people will have their complaints, and that this season's been divisive. I probably edge towards liking things more than I dislike them. For me, it's just stuff like the virus, some of the low points, and the constant popping up and dropping of characters, and how like they dropped basically all of Gen V even though I was really invested. And we were told to be as well. And yeah, that stuff just kind of made it fall a bit short. But Butcher and Homelander at least were handled expertly, and I think the supporting cast as well really added to the show too. When I look back on it, I'm probably going to remember the good over the bad, and stuff like Homelander, Butcher, Kimiko, Soldier Boy, Season 3, mainly in general, and so on and so forth. Those will probably be the things that I'll look back fondly on. Anyway, that wraps up the series, and it's kind of been a bittersweet ending for me due to how much it's been part of the channel over the years. I looked it up, and we did our Season 1 breakdown 6 years ago, which to me feels like a lifetime ago. That was before I had my kids, before I was married, before I had my dog, before we had any staff here, and it was just me, one guy locked away in a bedroom, writing scripts on videos and superheroes and stuff. That first season is basically when I started doing the channel full time, and the series has been there with regular releases throughout the years as we've grown. So it's actually a bit weird seeing it come to an end, but obviously I want to say thank you to everyone who's stuck with us since then, or if you've joined along the way, it's been great having you on board. Every week it's been incredible chatting to you guys over the years, and thank you to everyone who's been with us along the way and has watched the channel grow with the series. Can't actually bring myself to watch that first breakdown either because of how cringy my voice is and stuff. It's still cringy now, but even back then it was 10 times worse. But yeah, it's been a joy going back through it. So yeah, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I just want to say, who's the real heroes? You guys are, and thank you for all your support. Please drop a like on the video too, would really appreciate that as well, and make sure you leave a comment with your thoughts on the season below. If you want to follow us as well and keep up to date with what we've got coming down the line, then make sure that you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel get early access to videos like this every single week, and if you click the join button you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else. Costs just 99 cents a month, and hopefully that's not a lot to you, but if a lot of you do it, means a hell of a lot to us. So thank you for all your support as always, and if you want something else to watch, guess what? We've got a breakdown on screen right now. With that out of the way though, thank you so much again. I've been your host Paul. You've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.